Hello, dear friends. How many of you have watched the series From? Yes? And how did you like it? Personally, I'm really looking forward to Season 4. But while it hasn't been released yet, I invite you to listen to my original stories inspired by the series From. Check them out and leave a comment. Enjoy watching.
It was supposed to be a shortcut. Me and my buddy Danny were driving his old pickup from Amarillo to see my folks in Tulsa. We'd done the drive 100 times. But Danny, he saw this sign for a scenic route. Said he was sick of looking at nothing but dust and sky. I was half asleep in the passenger seat, so I just said, sure, whatever. I woke up to the truck bouncing down this 2-lane road I'd never seen before. It was getting dark, which was weird. We should have hit Tulsa by sundown. The road was cut through these thick woods, pines and oaks packed in so tight you couldn't see 10 feet in. Danny was squinting at the gas gauge. We were almost on E, he said. Thought there'd be a town by now. Then we saw it. A sign, all rusty, that just said Millbrook with an arrow. Danny pulled off. The town was small, just a main street with a diner, a gas station, and a bunch of old houses set way back from the road. The gas station was the only thing with lights on. Old man running the place, name tag said Frank. He filled us up. Danny went inside to pay, and I got out to stretch my legs. It was quiet. Not peaceful quiet, but the kind of quiet where you feel like you're being watched. I didn't hear any crickets, no frogs, nothing. Danny came out looking pale. He said we should stay, Danny said. Said we shouldn't drive at night, that we should go to the diner, get a room upstairs. I laughed. What? We got 3 hours of gas and a full tank. Let's get out of here. We pulled out of the station and headed for the main road we came in on. We drove for about 5 minutes before Danny slammed on the brakes. There was the rusty sign again. Millbrook. We were coming into town from the other side. Danny's knuckles were white on the wheel. We must have missed the turn. He turned the truck around and we drove back the way we came. Same thing. We drove for 10 minutes this time, and the road just curved right back into the main street of Millbrook. We did it 4 more times. Every single road, no matter which way we went, just dumped us back on that same main street. My heart was starting to hammer in my chest. This ain't happening, Danny whispered. We ended up at the diner. It was the only place with lights on now. The rest of the town was pitch black. Inside, there were maybe 6 other people, just sitting at tables, not talking. They all looked up at us when we walked in. Same look on all their faces. Tired, scared. A woman, maybe 30, with a little girl asleep in the booth next to her. She waved us over. Her name was Sarah. She'd been there for 3 weeks. Her husband tried to leave one night. She pointed out the window to a car parked on the street, the windows all busted out. Said he drove it straight into a tree at the edge of town at 2 in the morning. He was dead before they could pull him out. The rule is, she said, her voice low, you don't go out at night. You find a place with a door and a lock, and you stay there until the sun comes up. They come out at night. Danny laughed again, that nervous laugh. Who? Cops? The old cook behind the counter just pointed at the big plate glass window. Just watch, he said. We sat down. The other people in the diner, they all moved to booths away from the windows. Sarah pulled her little girl closer. Danny and I just stared out into the dark. At first,
Nothing, just the empty street. Then I saw something move between two houses. It was fast, a shape, tall and thin. Then another one on the other side of the street. They didn't walk normal. They moved in these jerky, twitchy ways, like their joints were all wrong. They started coming into the street, just standing there, looking at the diner, at us. Their faces, God, their faces. They looked like people. A man in a flannel shirt, a woman in a dress. But their eyes were empty, black holes, and their mouths were open too wide, like they were smiling, but it hurt them. One of them, the woman in the dress, she walked right up to the glass. She put her hand on it, and then she smiled, and she started talking. But it wasn't her voice. It was my mother's voice, clear as a bell. "Let me in, honey. It's cold out here. Why won't you let your own mother in?" I jumped up, my chair scraping loud on the floor. Danny grabbed my arm. "Don't you move," he hissed. Then the man in flannel started talking in Danny's dad's voice, telling him he was a disappointment, telling him to come out and face him like a man. They all started talking at once, using voices we knew, saying things that cut right through you, accusing us, begging us, screaming at us. The little girl woke up and started to cry, but she didn't make a sound. She just shook. All night it went on. They walked around the diner, scratching at the walls, tapping on the glass. The talking never stopped. They knew things about us. They knew about the fight I had with my brother. They knew about the money Danny owed to the wrong people. They whispered it all, over and over. Around 4 a.m., the old cook stood up. He was shaking. "I can't take it no more," he said. "It's my wife. She's out there. I gotta let her in." Before anyone could stop him, he ran to the door and unlocked it. He stepped out onto the sidewalk. The things didn't move. The woman in the dress just held out her arms. He walked right up to her, saying her name. They didn't tear him apart or anything. That would have been better. They just swarmed him. They all crowded around, and we couldn't see him anymore, but we could hear him. He screamed for a long, long time, and then it just stopped. When the sun finally came up, they were gone. The cook was gone too. There was nothing on the sidewalk but a dark stain. Me and Danny, we got in his truck and tried every road again, all day. It didn't matter. The town held us. We found a house to stay in that night, with Sarah and her kid and a few others. Boarded up the windows, sat in the dark with our backs to the wall, listening to the whispers start up outside as soon as the light died. That was 3 months ago. Danny, he tried to make a run for it 2 weeks back. He didn't make it to the truck. I heard him out there, calling my name, but it wasn't him. It was them, using his voice now. They have his voice. They have his face. I see him out there every night, standing at the edge of the trees, smiling that too wide smile, waiting for me to make a mistake.
Me and my boy Tommy were driving cross country. He was 9. It was just us since the divorce, and I wanted to show him something real, something other than his mom's apartment in a screen. We were headed to the Grand Canyon. I had it all planned out. Somewhere in the Nevada desert, I took a wrong turn, or what I thought was a wrong turn.
The GPS started acting up, telling me to turn where there was no road. Then it just went dark. The radio started hissing, then cutting in and out with these weird snippets of music, old stuff like big band music, then nothing but static. Tommy was asleep in the back, his head against the window. The road I was on, it was just a 2-lane blacktop, straight as an arrow through the desert. No other cars, no lights, just rocks and sand and the occasional dead bush. I figured it would hook back up with the highway eventually. I'd been driving for maybe an hour when I saw the sign. Gorman, 5 miles. I'd never heard of Gorman, but a town meant gas, and I was getting low. We came over a small rise, and there it was. A handful of buildings clustered around the road. A diner with a flickering neon sign. A motel with a bunch of cars parked out front. A gas station that looked like it hadn't been painted since the 50s. I pulled into the station. An old guy came out, moving slow. He filled the tank. I went to pay with my card, but he just shook his head. "Cash only," he said. I only had about $20 on me. It was enough for the gas, but barely. I asked him if there was an ATM in town. He just pointed down the road. "Diner might have one, but you best get a room for the night." I laughed. "We're good. Just need cash and we'll be back on the road." He looked at me then, a long, hard look. "Son," he said, his voice real low, "you've been on this road for a while now. How many times you seen that same rock that looks like a dog?" I didn't know what he was talking about, but then I thought about it. That big rock formation that looked a little like a sleeping dog. I'd seen it. I'd seen it right after I left the highway. I'd seen it again about 20 minutes later. I'd seen it just before I pulled into town. My stomach dropped. I took Tommy and we walked to the diner. It was almost full, which was weird for a town this small in the middle of nowhere. People in booths just sitting there, picking at food. Nobody was talking loud. A family at a big table, a mom and dad and 2 kids, they just stared at their plates. A guy in a cowboy hat sat at the counter, not moving. I asked the waitress if they had an ATM. She said no. I asked her how to get back to the highway. She just pointed out the window. "Just keep going west, you'll hit it."
I felt a little better. We got some food, used the bathroom, and got back in the car. I drove west out of town, past the last house, out into the desert. The sun was starting to get low. I drove for 20 minutes, and then I saw it. The diner, the motel, the gas station. I was coming into Gorman from the other side. I turned the car around, my hands shaking. I drove faster. The sun kept sinking. I saw the rock that looked like a dog. I saw the sign, Gorman, 5 miles. I drove into town again. Same street, same cars, same people in the diner windows. Tommy woke up. "Dad, why are we back here?" I didn't know what to tell him. We drove out again, every road I could find. Dirt paths, service roads. Every single one led back to the main street of Gorman. As the last light went out, I pulled back into the motel parking lot. The guy at the gas station was standing there, waiting for me. "Told you should have got a room." That night was the longest of my life. We got a room. It was old, smelled like cigarettes and dust. I put the chain on the door and pushed the dresser in front of it. Tommy was scared, but he trusted me. He fell asleep around midnight. I didn't sleep. I sat in a chair by the window, looking through a gap in the curtain. The street was empty, dead quiet. Then, around 1 a.m., I saw headlights. A car came driving slow down the main street. A sedan looked like from the 70s. It pulled up in front of the diner and just sat there, engine running. The door opened. A man got out. He walked to the back door, opened it, and just stood there.
waiting.
Then, from the desert, from the dark beyond the last streetlight, shapes started coming, walking slow. They got to the car. One by one, they got in the back seat. A woman in an old dress, a kid in overalls, another man in a suit. They just piled in. The back seat was full, but they kept getting in, squeezing in. The car sank lower on its springs. When they were all in, the first man closed the door, got back in the driver's seat, and drove off, slow, out of town, into the dark. I don't know why, but that was worse than anything I could imagine, the way they just waited for the ride. The next morning, I tried to talk to people. The family at the diner, they'd been there 2 years. The cowboy at the counter, he'd been there 5. He said some people had been there since the 60s. They just live here now. They work at the diner or the gas station. They raise kids. The kids grow up and become part of it. No one gets out. The worst part is, it's not just the road, it's the town itself. Things happen, things you can't explain. The cowboy told me about a man who tried to walk out into the desert. He was gone for 3 days. He came back, walking down the main street. He was smiling. He walked into the diner and ordered a coffee, but his eyes were wrong. He sat there for an hour, not talking, just smiling. Then he stood up, walked out, and kept walking into the desert on the other side of town. They found his body 2 days later, out by the rock that looks like a dog. He'd been dead for a week. That was a month ago for me and Tommy. We live in the motel. I work at the gas station now. The old guy, Frank, he taught me the ropes, said it's better to have something to do. Tommy goes to the little school they got set up in someone's house. He doesn't talk much anymore. Every night I sit by the window, and every night around 1 a.m. I see the headlights. The old sedan comes driving through. It stops at the diner. The driver gets out, opens the back door, and waits. Sometimes I see new shapes coming out of the dark. Sometimes I recognize them. People I saw my first day here. People who tried to leave. Last night I saw the family from the diner, the mom and dad and 2 kids. They were walking toward the car, slow. The kids were holding hands. They got in the back. The dad got in the front, and the car drove off. Today at breakfast, I asked the waitress about them. She just looked at me with tired eyes. "Who?" she said. There's no empty plates at their booth, no sign they were ever there. It's like they just got erased. I'm writing this down on a napkin. I don't know why, maybe so someone knows what happened to us, but no one's coming. The only people who find this town are the ones who are supposed to, and the only way out is that car, the one that comes at night. I see Tommy sleeping in the bed. I promised I'd keep him safe, but I don't know how. I don't know if I can. Because tonight, when the headlights come, I'm scared of what I might do. I'm tired. We're all so tired. And the desert just keeps waiting.
When my wife died, I needed to get my boy, Caleb, out of the city, away from the memories, the empty rooms, everything. I found a place online, small farm for rent, way out in the hills of West Virginia. Cheap, too cheap, but I didn't question it. I packed up our old truck and we drove. The place was called Morgan's Stand. The road to get there was dirt, winding up through thick woods for miles. No cell service for the last hour. When we finally pulled up, I felt a weight lift off me. It was a good-looking farmhouse, white with a porch, a big red barn out back, fields that hadn't been planted in a while but looked workable. The air was clean,
quiet. The owner was an old woman named Mrs. Harlow. She met us on the porch. She was nice enough, showed us around, gave me the keys, but as we were leaving, she stopped me. "There's rules," she said. "Simple ones. You got a dog?" I said no. "Good. Don't get one. And at night, you stay in the house. Lock the doors. Don't go out past the barn. The back 40, the land past the creek, that's not yours. Don't go there." I asked why. She just looked at me. "It's just the rules. You follow them, you'll be fine." Then she got in her old car and drove off. Caleb loved it. He was 10, and he spent the first week just running around the fields, exploring. I was busy fixing up the place, clearing rocks from the field, trying to figure out what I was gonna do. It was hard work, but good work. At night, we'd eat dinner, he'd do his schoolwork I'd downloaded before we left, and we'd go to bed early. It was peaceful. The first weird thing happened about 2 weeks in. I woke up in the middle of the night. Something was wrong. The house was dead quiet. No wind, no crickets, nothing. I got up to check on Caleb. He was asleep. I looked out his window, which faces the back of the property. I saw a light out past the barn near the creek, a flickering light, like a lantern or a fire. It moved slowly, back and forth. Then it went out. I figured it was a hiker or something. Stupid, maybe, but I was tired. I went to sleep. The next night, it happened again. I woke up at the same time, around 2 a.m., dead silence. I looked out the window. This time, there were 2 lights, moving, slow. They'd stop, then move again. They were on the other side of the creek, the back 40. I didn't sleep after that. I checked the locks, told myself it was nothing.
A few days later, I was fixing a fence post near the creek. Caleb was with me, poking at the water with a stick. I looked across the creek. The land on the other side was just more woods, thicker, darker, nothing special. But as I looked, I saw something hanging from a tree branch. It was old, weather-beaten, a dog collar. Then I saw another one on a different tree, and another. There were dozens of them, hanging from branches, nailed to trunks, all along the other side of the creek. Different sizes, different colors, all of them old and faded. I told Caleb it was time to go inside. He asked why. I didn't answer. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I sat in the dark living room with a shotgun across my lap. At 2 a.m., the silence came, and then, from outside, I heard it. A dog, barking. Not one dog, many dogs, barking and howling, but the sound was wrong. It was too deep, too loud. It came from the back 40. The barking went on for maybe an hour. Then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped, and the silence was worse. The next morning, I walked down to the creek. I didn't cross it. I just stood on my side. On the other side, in the mud, I saw prints, dog prints, big ones, but they weren't right. They were too big and the shape was off. The toes were too long. And there were boot prints, too, man's boots mixed in with them. I went to see Mrs. Harlow. She lived about 10 miles down the mountain in a little house. I told her what I saw, the lights, the sounds, the prints. She got real quiet. Then she said, "You didn't cross the creek, did you?" I said, "No." "Good, you keep it that way." She poured herself a glass of water, her hands shaking a little. "My husband, he bought that land years ago, the farm, the back 40. The man who sold it to him, old Mr. Morgan, he told him the same thing I told you. Don't go past the creek at night. My husband, he was a curious man. One night he took a lantern and he went over there,
just to see. She stopped, looked out the window. He came back at sunrise. He walked into the house, went to the bedroom, and got in bed. I thought he'd just been out all night, but he never spoke again, not a word. He just sat on the porch and stared at the woods. He did that for 40 years until he died. The night he crossed that creek, something crossed with him, something that never left.
I drove back to the farm. I wanted to leave, but I had no money, no place to go. We'd been there a month. Maybe it would be all right. That night, I made sure all the doors and windows were locked. I put Caleb's mattress in my room, and we both slept on the floor. I kept the shotgun by my side. At 2 a.m., the silence came. Then the dogs started barking, but this time they were closer. They were on my side of the creek. I heard 'em moving through the field, their heavy breathing, their footsteps in the dry grass. They circled the house. I heard 'em scratching at the foundation, sniffing under the door. Caleb woke up. He didn't cry. He just looked at me. I put my finger to my lips. Then a voice came from outside, a man's voice, deep, slow. Open the gate. We didn't move. Open the gate. Louder this time. Then the dogs started scratching at the door. The wood started to splinter. I aimed the shotgun. I didn't know if it would do any good. And then, just like that, it stopped. The scratching stopped. The breathing stopped. I heard 'em moving away, back toward the creek. The barking faded into the distance. When the sun came up, I went outside. The door was gouged deep, long scratches in the wood like from huge claws. I walked to the edge of the field, and I saw it. A gate. There hadn't been a gate there before. It was old, made of rough wood, standing alone in the middle of the field. On the other side of the gate was the creek, and beyond that, the back 40. The gate was open. It was open, facing my house. I closed it. I put a chain on it, but I know it doesn't matter. They opened it once. They can do it again. And every night, I wait for the silence. I wait for the barking to start. I wait for that voice to tell me to open the gate. I should have never brought my boy here. But now, we're stuck. We're just waiting for the night the dogs don't stop. The night they get in. The night we have to go with them across the creek into the dark where all those collars are hanging on the trees.
I was a long-haul trucker for 15 years, seen just about everything the American road has to offer. But nothing prepared me for the stretch of highway between Flagstaff and nowhere. It was late October. I was hauling a load of lumber to California, running behind schedule. The sun went down fast in the desert. And before I knew it, I was driving in pitch black. My radio started cutting out. First the music, then the static, then nothing, just silence. My GPS went haywire, the screen flickering like a bad TV. I figured it was solar flares or some crap. I kept driving. That's when I saw the sign. Cactus Creek, next 5 exits. Funny thing was, I'd driven this route 100 times. There was no Cactus Creek. But my tanks were low and a town sounded good. I took the next exit. The off-ramp led to a 2-lane road that went through flat desert for a few miles, then suddenly dipped down into a valley. And there it was, a town. Not a big one, but not a ghost town either. Gas stations, a diner, a motel, A bar called the Oasis. Cars parked on the street, lights on in the windows. I pulled into a truck stop on the edge of town, filled up, went inside to pay. The guy behind the counter was young, maybe 20, with tired eyes. I asked him how to get back to the interstate. He looked at me. "You just got here, didn't you?" I said, "Yeah." He nodded, like he expected it. "You can't get back, not at night. You gotta wait till morning. Even then, it's tricky. Best get a room at the motel. Tell him Earl sent you." I laughed. "Son, I got a schedule. I ain't staying in some podunk town." He just shrugged. "Suit yourself, but if you drive out that way," he pointed east, "you'll be back here in 20 minutes. West, same thing. North, south, don't matter. The roads all lead back to Cactus Creek." I didn't believe him. I got back in my rig and drove out of town going east. 20 minutes later, I was passing the same truck stop. Earl was at the window watching me drive by. He didn't even smile.
I tried every road, every dirt path, every washboard track. 2 hours later, I was still in Cactus Creek. I parked at the truck stop and sat in my cab trying to think. That's when I noticed the other trucks. Big rigs lined up along the back fence of the lot, dozens of them. Some looked new, some were old, rusted out with flat tires. They'd been there a while. I went back inside. "What is this place?" Earl said it's a rest stop, a permanent one. He told me the rules. No driving at night, stay inside after dark, don't open doors for anyone, don't look too long at the windows. Same old song and dance I'd heard before in other trap towns, but this time it was different. This time there was something else. "There's a train," Earl said. "You'll hear it around midnight. The midnight special, some folks call it. It runs on the old tracks on the other side of town. When you hear it, you don't go near it. You don't watch it. You get inside and you stay inside until it's gone." I asked what happened if you watched it. He just shook his head. "You don't want to know." I got a room at the motel. It was basic, clean enough. I sat on the bed staring at the wall, trying to figure out my next move. Around 11:30, I heard it. A train whistle, far off but getting closer. It was old-timey, like from a Western movie, not a modern horn. The whistle blew again, closer. I made a mistake. I went to the window. I pulled back the curtain just an inch. The train was coming down the tracks real slow. It was an old steam train, all black, with a single passenger car lit up from inside. It wasn't moving like a normal train. It glided, silent except for the whistle. The wheels didn't make any sound on the tracks. As it passed by the edge of town, I saw the passenger car windows. They were full of people, pressed against the glass, not waving, just staring out. Their faces were pale, blank. They looked like they'd been on that train a long, long time. Some of them had their hands on the glass, like they were trying to get out, or maybe trying to get someone to come in. The train stopped, right there at a crossing with no gates, no lights, just stopped. The passenger car door slid open. No one got off. The whole town went dead quiet. No crickets, no wind, nothing. Just that open door, waiting. I let the curtain fall. I sat on the floor with my back to the wall, my heart pounding. I didn't sleep.
The next morning, I went to the diner. Place was full of people. Truckers, families, old folks, all of them with that same tired look. I sat at the counter next to an older guy, a trucker named Red. He'd been there 8 months. "You see the train last night?" he asked. I nodded. "First time?" I nodded again. He took a long drink of his coffee. "I got a wife and kid in Oklahoma," he said. "Been trying to get back to 'em for 8 months. Every road out of here just loops back. But the train leaves every night. And every night, some folks decide they're gonna be on it. They think it's going somewhere real. He pointed out the window. Across the street, a family was loading suitcases into an old station wagon. A mom, a dad, 2 little kids. They drove off toward the edge of town. New folks, Red said. Been here 3 weeks. They're gonna try the roads again. They do that every day for a few months, then they give up. Then they start thinking about the train. I watched the station wagon disappear down the road. 20 minutes later, came back from the other direction. The mom was crying, the dad was pounding the steering wheel. See, Red said, after a while, the train starts to look like the only option. It's the only thing that actually leaves, the only thing that goes somewhere. He told me about the people who got on. They'd walk to the crossing around midnight, stand there in the dark and wait. When the train came, the door would slide open and they'd get on. The door would close and the train would glide away into the desert, and no one ever saw them again. But here's the thing, Red said, lowering his voice. Sometimes, a few days later, you'll see them again, in the windows of the passenger car. When the train comes through, they're still on it, still pressed against the glass, still riding, night after night, forever. I stayed in Cactus Creek for 2 weeks. I tried every road, every trick I knew. Nothing worked. The train came every night more people got on. A young couple holding hands, an old man with a suitcase, a mother carrying a baby. 2 weeks ago, Red got on. He said he couldn't take it anymore. The missing his family, the waiting. He walked to the crossing at midnight. The train came, the door opened, he got on. The door closed, and the train glided away into the desert. Last night, I saw him in the passenger car window, pressed against the glass. His face was pale, blank. He was looking right at me as the train passed, and I swear, for just a second, he raised his hand, like he was waving, or maybe like he was telling me to stay where I was. I'm still here. I live in my truck now. I work at the truck stop for Earl. I watch the new people arrive every bay, pulling off that exit, thinking they've found a place to get gas. I watch them try the roads. I watch them break down. I watch them start looking at the train. Tonight, the train will come. The whistle will blow. The door will slide open, and I'll be in my motel room, on the floor, with my back to the wall. I won't look out the window. I won't go near it, because I know now the only way out of Cactus Creek is that train, and the train doesn't take you home. It just takes you for a ride that never, ever ends.